Do the new 2-in-1 ESCs and Arrma's 223s 1/10 scale vehicles have a serious design flaw? Today, we're gonna find out. I've been seeing more and more reports of people having short runtime issues with these 223s trucks, and a lot of people are attributing it to a potentially high LVC cutoff on these ESCs, but I think there might be more to it than that. In order to test it out, of course, we gotta get this 4S ESC out of here. If you're not familiar with the term, LVC stands for low voltage cutoff, and it's the voltage at which the ESC will actually turn itself off or go into a low power mode in order to protect the battery from damage. LVC is very important on these vehicles because if you do bring a battery below a certain voltage, internal damage occurs, and there's no way to recover the battery from that damage, and that damage can cause problems down the road. Depending on how the ESC is programmed, LVC cutoff will behave differently. Some ESCs will turn off power to the motor, but they'll still let you steer because the BEC will still be powered. Other ESCs will go into a limp mode where it reduces power to the motor. That allows you to get your truck back to you without having to go walk and pick it up, though eventually those systems will cut off power to the motor as well. There are a ton of factors that go into how long your battery is going to last before LVC kicks in, and we're going to talk about all of that. But before we do that, I'm going to charge up all three of these batteries. This is a pretty old power hobby. We've got a fairly new SMC and a just about brand new, but probably lower quality Angry Snail battery. Between these three batteries, we should get a pretty good idea of where the LVC is actually going to kick in, at least on this particular 223s ESC. Now, I've already been bashing this truck for several minutes. We've got the Power Hobby batteries in here. These Power Hobby batteries are pretty old, and I'm not entirely sure how healthy they are. They were very good batteries when they were new though, so I'm guessing we're probably going to be getting fairly close to LVC, though we definitely haven't hit it yet, and it does feel like it's got a decent amount of power still, so we'll just keep bashing, jumping it off the new ramp. By the way, if you haven't seen my video on making that ramp, definitely check out the how to jump video. Even if you've been jumping for a long time, there's some good information in there that I think anybody would be happy to know. I do know that the old Hobbywing ESCs used to kick in LVC pretty darn low, and I suspect that might have something to do with why people think this LVC is too high, though maybe it is too high. We are definitely going to find out. So far though, so good with this battery. I kind of expected it to hit LVC a little while ago because I've already run it down pretty far, but we are definitely still plugging along here. If you enjoy these kinds of investigative videos, why don't you go ahead and get subscribed and hit that bell to get notified of future videos. We've got some really cool projects coming up and some things you've probably never seen before, and I don't think you're going to want to miss it. So we're just going to keep doing what I would consider medium load bashing here. I think this is pretty representative of what most people are going to do when they're bashing. Some people are going to do more pausing and stopping and going and picking up the truck like I'm about to now. And we're definitely going to talk about how bashing style affects when LVC kicks in. There are more factors involved than you might think. All right, I'm gonna really start pushing this thing, trying to get LVC to kick in. Because like I said, I expected that it would have happened before. Got a little self-righting there. Let me know if you want to see a video about self-righting. I've got some thoughts on that topic. Let's get a nice big jump here with a back flip. I will say this granite handles really well. I do have the Proline shocks on here and the Proline tires. They definitely help with the handling, but even right out of the box, the handling's pretty good. While we're doing this, let me know what you think about the increased prices we've had from Horizon recently. They definitely increased a lot of their pricing, and Red Cat has as well. All right, this pack's probably getting pretty low. Let's just run back and forth at high speed until it hits LVC. There it goes, LVC just kicked in, and we are in low power mode. Let's see what the voltage is. It's really important to understand all the factors that are involved in when LVC is going to kick in for your particular setup, and there are more things involved than you might think. First, let's talk about the battery. The size of the battery makes a big difference. This is a 7600 milliamp hour battery. It is the size and the actual C rating that determine how much power this thing can put out, and it's that size that also determines how long you're going to get that power for. The size and the C rating also determine how much sag you get under acceleration. All of those things combined with the load that the car is putting on the battery will give you your output voltage at any given point in time. Speaking of which, the car and what you're doing with it also have a big effect on when LVC is going to kick in. The more powerful your ESC and the bigger your motor, the more load you're going to be putting on your battery, therefore the more sag you're going to be getting on your voltage. How you drive makes a big difference. If you're just gently cruising around, you're not really going to be sagging the battery very much, which counterintuitively means you'll probably end up with a lower voltage when you have LVC kick in. This is because if you're just jamming full throttle back and forth as fast as you can, you're sagging the voltage of this battery down really, really hard, and that lower sagged voltage might cause the LVC to kick in sooner, and then that voltage will recover once you stop bashing, and you'll actually end up with a higher voltage than if you were driving really, really gently. Another thing to keep in mind is that the age of your battery is going to have a huge effect on how much capacity it has, how much output capability it has, and how much sag it has. This is a pretty old battery, and let's go ahead and take a look and see what the voltages on it are. As you saw, I went ahead and shut it down as soon as low voltage cutoff kicked in, so we should have basically worst case scenario here, and we've got an interesting result. We have 3.75 volts on 2 and 3, but 3.67 volts on 1. Your ESC doesn't understand individual cell voltage, it only reads the entire pack voltage, which means the LVC voltage will actually be the average of these three voltages, and since I've got one weak cell, that means two cells are going to end up a little bit higher than we would have expected. That being said, the average of these three cells is 3.72 volts, and that's actually pretty darn close to what you want when your LVC kicks in. If you take a look at this chart, you'll see that LiPo discharge is very non-linear, and the voltage stays pretty constant through most of the range of the discharge, and then at the end, it just drops off a cliff. So 3.85 volts is 50% charged, but as you can see, 3.7 volts is about 10% charged. And since, like I said, that voltage is going to sag down under hard acceleration, you want to have a little bit of headroom left, otherwise you're going to be dropping your cells down below a safe voltage, and that can damage the battery. Now, I'm going to explain exactly why it damages the battery and why you can't recover a damaged battery in a minute, but now for completeness, I'm going to go ahead and run this pack and this pack down to LVC. Again, this is a fairly new, pretty good pack, and this is a cheaper pack that's actually almost brand new, so let's get these run down to low voltage cutoff and see where we end up on them. First of all, I want to say, man, these cars are fun. I just ran 3 full packs through this thing and I didn't get bored, and it took a while to do. Now, before we check the voltages on these two batteries, which I also ran all the way down to LVC and shut down right when they hit LVC, I want to talk about the other shutdown scenario you can get with these ESCs, and that's over temperature. These ESCs have a temperature sensor in the ESC, but not in the motor. So if the ESC gets too hot, it will shut down in a similar but not quite the same way as it will on LVC. With LVC, when it shuts down, you can still slowly drive the car. When it shuts down on overheat, it just stops. That's how you can know the difference between the two. I did have a couple of overheat shutdowns, but that's because I got a bunch of leaves on top of the fan, and I was driving it in kind of an abnormal way, just trying to wear the batteries down, so it was kind of non-stop bashing. But it is definitely important to understand the difference between those two so you don't think you're getting LVC when you're actually getting an over-temp shutdown. The other thing we need to cover before we look at the voltages on the batteries is why undervolting your batteries is so bad for them. Inside your battery there are cells. Those cells have layers in them, and those layers have various materials on them that when a cell gets below a certain voltage, say about 3 volts or below, can go into solution in the electrolyte in the battery and then redeposit completely randomly. Those random deposits can cause little stalactites to form between the layers in your cells, and those stalactites can cause micro shorts anytime in the future, which can cause a cascading thermal event. Essentially, your battery's going to catch fire. There's no way to fix this and no way to test for it. Checking the internal resistance of the battery won't necessarily show it, and the batteries can act completely normally right up until the time where they catastrophically fail on you. This is why if you ever have a battery that's gone under voltage, you want to just throw it away. Now, of course, if you go to like 2.9 volts for 2 minutes, that's probably recoverable, but especially if the battery's been sitting for a while or is deeply discharged down to, say, below 2 volts, that battery is now just a fire hazard no matter what you do with it. Can you get away with recovering dead batteries? Maybe. Is the battery worth more than your house, its occupants, and contents? It isn't to me. And with that being said, let's check these voltages. First of all, we've got about 3.5 volts per cell on this Angry Snail 5000 milliamp hour battery. And now let's check the SMC battery. With this, again, about 3.5 volts per cell. So depending on how I was driving, I was being a bit more aggressive with these and a bit less aggressive with these because I was just driving around trying to burn these down at the end. You're probably going to see somewhere between a little over 3.7 volts per cell and or maybe 3.55 volts per cell on a battery that hits LVC in one of these 2-in-1 223s ESCs. And honestly, that's just fine. Is it higher than some other ESCs? Yes. But is it a problem? I don't think so. And it actually will help protect your batteries from getting damaged in the long run. So why then are some people experiencing really short run times with these ESCs? I suspect there are a number of different reasons why this could happen. The batteries could be undersized. They could have too low of a C rating. They could be old and one of the cells or multiple cells could be weak. You could have bad connections or possibly a high mechanical resistance situation in the car. But again, if you're seeing between around 3.7 and 3.5 volts per cell when your LVC cuts in on one of these, there isn't actually a problem. And I'm not really surprised by this result. I think this, granted, is the 4th truck I've had with that 223s system in it, and I've had very similar results. LVC kicks in at an appropriate time, if maybe on the high end of that appropriate time. That being said, I'm really curious to see what kind of voltages you're seeing on your cells when LVC cuts in on these ESCs. So let me know down in the comments what your experience has been. Obviously, runtime and stuff like that really isn't what we're looking for here. We're looking at the actual cell voltages themselves. Again, as long as you're in that 3.5 to 3.7 range, it's not actually a problem. But let me know down in the comments what you found, and then check out one of these videos.